episode 4 of the Behind the Beacon podcast. I'm your host, Seth Orensky. Before our first interview, I want to encourage all of our student athletes to join us on Thursday night, October 1st, for a night of programming. At 7 p.m., UMass Boston Athletics is hosting a Zoom entitled Student Athlete Activism, taking a stance on difficult decisions. The Zoom will be a great chance to learn about activism and how it can affect people and discover different ways to use the platform of being a student athlete. After the Zoom ends around 8 p.m., UMass Boston Athletics will be hosting a game night on the Beacon's Athletics Discord channel. All student athletes are welcome to join, and it'll be a great chance to meet people and play games with options available from video games to multiplayer free online games. A link for the Social Activism Zoom and an invite to the Beacon's Athletics Discord channel will go out on Wednesday. Our first guest this week is Little East Conference Commissioner Pam Samuelson. Pam served as an assistant athletic director at UMass Boston from 1998 to 2003, before taking over as the commissioner of the LEC in July of 2019. I caught up with her to talk about her time at UMass Boston and how it affected her, and how the conference office is navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm joined by Little East Conference Commissioner Pam Samuelson. Commish, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today, Seth. Thank you.
Pam, you started at several other colleges, but one of the major steps on the way to becoming a conference commissioner was at UMass Boston. You served as an assistant athletic director from 1998 to 2003. UMass Boston has come a long way since then, but can you tell us a little bit about your time as a Beacon and what you were trying to work on with the department at that point?
For sure, Seth. And first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'm so grateful to Charlie Titus that I even got to UMass Boston. The circumstances were I'd just been accepted for a PhD program at Boston College, and I was currently the AD at Curry College at that time, and didn't believe that I could handle the duties there of an AD and take the PhD studies seriously. So I was planning to go full time. I had resigned from Curry, and a short while after that, I got a call from Charlie, and he'd heard I'd resigned from Curry and said, I've got an opening here. Are you interested? And I said, well, Charlie, I'm decided I'm going to work on a PhD at Boston College. And he said, well, let's sit down and talk. And I said, I don't know that we can work all that out. And Charlie said, Pam, we're in the business of education, so we should be able to work this out. And so Charlie and I, had a cup of coffee, and it turned out I ended up there. And you're right, Seth. It's just it's come a long way since I left in 2003. Some of the differences being, there was almost exclusively part-time coaches back then on the UMass staff. And that's really difficult to build quality programs with part-time coaches. And so that was one hurdle we had. And trying to deal with coaches that weren't there during the day, trying to keep student athletes engaged in a commuter-only campus, because there was no residence hall at that time on campus. So there were a lot of challenges in terms of the athletic piece. But one thing that I really enjoyed about my time there was the student athletes. Those young men and women were incredibly committed. What they went through just to get to campus every day for practices, games, they'd get home late at night, have to go catch the T to go home. The sacrifices they made in overcoming some of the challenges they had that you don't have on residential campuses. To me, I just had a lot of admiration for them. It was a great learning experience for me because I'd been primarily at small private institutions. But it was a time that I really valued, and I think I grew a lot as an administrator because of some of those differences from institutions that I'd been at the past.
Do you have any specific memories or maybe some lessons that you learned working at UMass Boston that kind of helped you when you left UMass Boston? You went on to another AD job at Susquehanna and now the conference commissioner job. So clear at every stop, it seems like you were able to pick up something.
For sure. And one of the things where UMass Boston, most particularly at that time, really stood apart from others was a commitment to the community. And, I know Charlie was such a big part of the community, most especially in that Columbia Point area, as well as the whole city of Boston. But the number of community events that we hosted, the outreach that we had to young kids and youth in that area. To me, and I wasn't, frankly, I was pretty much all about the athletics prior to that and building competitive programs. But one thing I really learned was how sports can really be a vehicle to help young people and truly make a difference in the lives of youth. And I gained such an appreciation for that in my time at UMass Boston, because it was so much a part, and the community was so much a part of the programs there at that time.
Well, you left UMass Boston in 2003 to take another AD job and then came back to New England and the Little East Conference last year. What was the reasoning behind making that move? Susquehanna had a lot of success under you. You'd obviously put a lot into that program. Why come back to New England?
Yeah, I tell you, my 16 years at Susquehanna, I really treasure. I had a great experience there, worked with some wonderful people, some wonderful student athletes, really enjoyed my time there. It really was about personal circumstances. My partner had retired and their family was here in the New England area, so we wanted to get back here. And so I'd made a commitment that I would look for a position. I wasn't ready to retire yet at that point in time, still not. And so looking for a position, but I did not want to do the athletic director role again. You know, frankly, at this point in my career, and looking back, there's been a lot of years of 6-day work weeks and 7-day work weeks and a lot of nights. And my father passed away a couple years ago. And at that point in time, I reflected a lot more than I ever had in terms of stopping and thinking about how I wanted to spend my time going forward. And so I was looking to do something different. The commissioner gig really didn't excite me very much, to be quite honest. But ironically, in the Landmark Conference, they asked me to co-chair a search for a new commissioner in the Landmark Conference. And so I agreed to do that. And through that process, working with the search committee, working with our consulting company, I really gained an appreciation for the commissioner, Division III commissioner, and what they do now. The role has changed over the past 10 years or so, much more engaging now. And so when the Little East opening came up, I talked to a few people about it. I talked to Charlie about it. And decided to go for it, and just really, really glad that I have. I've really enjoyed the role.
Well, you took over last year and had a really good, strong start to the year, and then something that no one could have anticipated, a worldwide pandemic. I think a lot of student athletes, coaches, administrators think about how it's impacting them, how it's impacting their program. How do you deal with the implications of how this is impacting the conference and impacting all the different schools, not just the regular Little East Conference schools, but even the affiliates who have programs with the LEC in terms of scheduling, trying to schedule a fall season and now hoping to get a winter or spring season in when you have teams in so many different states and so many different situations in terms of having commuter schools versus having students on campus this fall?
For sure, there's a lot of moving parts and challenges to this. I guess, Seth, first and foremost, still to this day, this all started, in early March, but my heart goes out to the student athletes and to the coaches in any of the seasons, because they're all impacted at this point. 4 years of a college experience goes very, very quickly. And as you know, college athletes are really passionate about what they do. And in our level at Division III, they're doing it because they love to do it. And the coaches, similarly, this is their lives. And for many, it's their livelihood. And they want to do what they can to give the student athletes the best experience. So I really feel for them that are really directly impacted on a daily basis. From my end, I'm so grateful with the group that I'm able to work with. Our ADs in the Little East are very talented, and we have folks with a lot of experience and have been through a lot of different things. So I'm fortunate in that I don't feel like I have to carry a whole load of anything, because I think with our ADs, it's been a collaborative effort. in terms of through all these months, trying to work through first when we thought we were going to be playing in the fall, getting together some policies for return to play in the fall, and then when that got postponed, we immediately put our minds to what can we do to get going in the winter. I will tell you more for my associate Daryl, my associate commissioner Daryl Kanicki. He's put together a lot of different schedules in the past 2 months, both for winter sports and then now trying to fit some fall play for our fall sports into the spring. Into the spring season. You kind of just put one foot ahead of the other and keep moving forward and keep planning in terms of for the best case scenario, knowing that we're going to have to make adjustments down the road. You mentioned the affiliates, and that certainly presents another element to it. And again, I have a great relationship with Angela Bauman, the commissioner of the MASCAC, so she and I talk fairly regularly and keep in touch in terms of what we're doing, where our conferences are headed, so that when I do meet, we do invite the affiliate ADs to our meetings, when we're dealing with something in those sports. But by the time we get to that point with the meetings, I have a pretty good idea of how the MASCAC is operating and what they're doing. And I think similarly, they have a pretty good idea of what we're doing in the Little East. So I'd have to say from kind of the standpoint of the mechanics of things, I think it's gone fairly well. The harder thing, I think, is just trying to deal with the emotions of everything. We all want to get back to play. And so some days you feel a little more frustrated with things than others. And you see that in the ADs as well. You hear it in their voices on certain days. The things that they're dealing with on their campuses is incredible in terms of the challenges that they're having to think about with student athletes and practices and testing and social distancing and keeping their staff safe at the same time. It's definitely a lot. So I think in some cases, the mechanics of things and moving forward is a little bit easier than when we meet and kind of, hearing the emotions of those that are working with it actually more directly than I am. I hope that wasn't rambling, Seth.
No, it was a nuanced answer, and I think anyone who's been in any back-to-play meeting recognizes there's so many things that goes into it. It was great catching up with you and kind of learning more about your story and how UMass Boston made an impact on you. And I think we all hope that you'll be able to give out some championship trophies come this winter and spring for those teams competing in the LEC.
And here as well, that's what we're all hoping for. Everyone wants to see the student athletes back on the field.
That was my interview with Little East Conference Commissioner Pam Samuelson. The Little East Conference is preparing to resume playing sports in January with the hope of playing a winter and spring season in the spring semester, along with some form of a fall season as well. Before we get to our next interview, I'd like to dig a little deeper on one of the On This Date posts from this past week. On September 23rd, 1989, well before any of our student athletes were born, men's soccer junior Charlie Keskanidis put together a record-setting performance. The forward from Medford recorded a program record 7 goals and 16 points in an 11-1 win over Suffolk University. He ranks tied for 6th in Division III men's soccer history for points and goals scored in a single game. Charlie still holds the program record for career goals with 62 and points with 138. Now let's turn to our second guest. Volleyball alum Pepper Baker graduated in 2016 as one of the top all-around setters in program history. The only problem was that the English major wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do when she graduated. 4 years later, Pepper has a master's in journalism from Columbia University and is working as a reporter at WMAZ in Macon, Georgia. Pepper details her journey from UMass Boston to Columbia and now Georgia, and talks about how she's adjusted in Georgia and the work she's most proud of. I'm joined by UMass Boston volleyball alum Pepper Baker. Pepper, how are you doing?
Good. I'm great. This is awesome. Good to hear from you again, Seth.
Pepper, as an undergrad student, you studied English, but you actually worked in the sports information department a little bit and talked about wanting to become a journalist. And now you're in Macon, Georgia. You've accomplished the goal. Can you talk about the process to get there? First, just getting into Columbia University sounded like it was a little bit of a journey in itself.
It was. I have to start off by saying I honestly did not know what I wanted to do all throughout college. I feel like volleyball was just my thing. That was all I really cared about. And then all of a sudden senior year came and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do afterwards for the rest of my life? You can't really, pro options in volleyball with my height. It's just not really existent. So I had worked with you guys at that point. And then I do have to mention the summer internship I did with Channel 7 News up in Boston was a big help in kind of guiding this whole process. But I had applied to Emerson for grad school because I was like, I don't have any jobs lined up. So, of course, the thing that you're supposed to do right is grad school, I guess. So I applied on a whim. And Emerson I got accepted into pretty quickly after I applied. But then it was I went ahead and applied to Columbia because my cousin had actually gone there for their graduate journalism school. And just kind of recommended me to do the same. So I did it, not thinking I was even going to be a contender. I mean, it's Columbia we're talking about. I wasn't an extraordinary student at UMass Boston, so I didn't think anything. It was a long shot, but I did get on the wait list, and I was happy with that, honestly. And I went ahead and enrolled at Emerson because they had a mandatory 2-month virtual class over the summer. And I was about a month into those classes when I got a call from Columbia's journalism school's dean, who basically just said, spots open up and it's yours. Like I'm off the wait list. So I was pumped, but it was a week before school started. So just imagine my shock of having to find an apartment in Manhattan or in Harlem in a week and then starting school. So I had to uproot my life in Boston, pretty much withdraw from Emerson, the classes I had already started taking, and then start my life in New York. And I did it. I mean, it was great.
What was that experience like? Columbia is known around the country as one of the best journalism schools in the country. And from personal experience, grad school, you're doing most of the same work as an undergrad, except you're doing it in a much more condensed period. So it's sink or swim in some degree. You have to pick up those skills quickly or you really fall behind.
Yes, that is very true. And I realized that now that I'm in my job now, a lot of my coworkers went to 4-year journalism schools in undergrad and obviously didn't need the grad school experience. But because I was an English major, like you had said, I didn't have that. So it's a lot of journalism grad schools are these very fast-paced, accelerated programs. So you're doing, you have to learn about everything, the ethics of journalism. You got to learn law, how you can be sued from all of these, if you don't report the right information, all of that. You're taking core classes like that along with, carrying equipment all over New York City and interviewing people and being told no and learning the camera and all of this just hardcore stuff that you're getting thrown at you at once. So Columbia's journalism school was definitely rewarding, but extremely challenging. I mean, a lot of the times through it, I called my mom, my best friend from home, crying my eyes out, thinking a lot back to my time at UMass Boston and thinking I wanted to do this. And then realizing once I had to get, my legs in this business, going through grad school, I didn't know. So for a lot of it, it was a lot of just asking myself, is this what I really wanted to do? But of course, by the time I got to graduation, I was just well, I did it. I got a master's from an Ivy League. Here I am. So it was hard, extremely hard. But I feel like I got street cred now. I mean, not too many people can say they went through, Columbia's journalism program.
So how did you go from Columbia to what seems like a pretty awesome job in Macon, Georgia at Channel 13 WMAZ?
Yeah, Columbia is their journalism school is infamous for this career fair that they have every spring. So, and they get us all ready for it, resumes. We have to put our reels together of all the video work we've done. And we basically put ourselves on display. And that happens around the March, April month of the spring semester. So a bunch of big media companies come there. I mean, you've got your print media, like Rolling Stone is there, but you also got your CNN and ABC and all of that, ESPN, all these big names. they come and I interview, you make a list and you go and you kind of do speed dating with these companies, and it's daunting, but a lot of the big media companies come there wanting to look for interns and maybe some fellowship, partnership type deals. But I really wanted to just get on air. And for me, that was just the most important. So I did interview with them. But when I heard that they were kind of more looking for producer work or internships, I went ahead and sat at the booth that this company Tegna had there, which Tegna is a media outlet that owns like 40 plus local news stations across the country. And they have some really well-known stations. So I met with their representative, who was a man from Jacksonville, a station in Jacksonville. And he looked at my reel, and of course it was rocky because I'm telling you, like, I'd never really been on camera like this before. So I'm like using just like my first, experiences. And, he was just pretty taken with, he said I had great camera presence, of course needed room to work, but he felt the best fit for me would be this 13 WMAZ station in Macon, Georgia. And they hire a lot of people right out of school. And it was close enough to home for me. Tallahassee is 3 hours away. So I was used to the South. I was actually kind of happy to have the opportunity to go back to the South because I was kind of tired of being in the North for 5 years in the cold, and I'm a Florida girl, so it was fine for me to go back close to home. So yeah, he put me in contact with the news director from the 13 WMAZ here, and she called me probably within a week after that career fair, and we set up a visit. I went down to Macon, and then I did a writing test and all of that to make sure I was at least I could at least put a story together. And I gave them pretty much I told them I wanted the job probably a week after that visit. So I actually had accepted the position before I graduated from Columbia in 2017.
What has it been like working in a town like Macon that has tremendous history, but also being in a place that you don't know and have to be the authority on what's going on locally?
It was hard at first. It's like you feel like you're getting parachuted into unfamiliar territory and then told, go tell us what's happening. And that's tough. And honestly, grad school kind of prepared me for that. It took me back to when, during Columbia, they gave me a beat in Brooklyn. It was Borough Park, which is it's a big population of Orthodox Jewish people. And that was my beat. And I had to go and try to talk to Orthodox Jewish men, and they don't, their religion doesn't really allow them to talk to women a lot. So it was just hard. So that experience helped me when I came to Macon because it was a lot easier in this setting. So, it was hard, but you do the normal things. I had to join a lot of Facebook groups and talk to my coworkers who were veterans here about how they kind of got acclimated to the community. I did start coaching volleyball because that opportunity came about from a coach who had read my bio and found out from my past with UMass and Leon High School and all of this that I had played. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to meet some parents and get acquainted with some young athletes. And that helped just give me a little place in the community, but it wasn't easy. And as you go out in the community and you volunteer, you get your name out there. You get story ideas from locals, and it ends up falling into place. And you drive around on your off days, and you just kind of have to get as familiar with the area as fast as you can. But obviously not overnight, but it works itself out.
What has been your favorite story thus far that you've worked on in Macon, whether it's your quality of work or maybe something really special that happened that you were able to report on?
You get to this point where you've reported or done, because we do day turns, like, hundreds of stories now in the 2.5 years I've been here. Wow. Well, I guess I'd have to say it's not so much one particular story I can remember, but I do these series called School. I'm the education reporter now at WMAZ, so I work a lot with the schools, which became a huge thing with COVID-19. But I was doing this series called School of the Week, which happens every Friday, and we highlight, some good things that happen in the schools. And I will say, I mean, I don't have one I can particularly think of off the top of my head, but I love the series, because when I got here, a lot of the schools were saying that we only would report the bad things that happened, whether it was a student bringing a gun into the school or a teacher, was charged with some crime. And we didn't do enough of all the good things. And when I came here, particularly the county that I live in was going through a pretty drastic change from their last superintendent, like having a lot of money problems with the district. And I think like along the lines of maybe stealing from some of the county funds. And they just got a new superintendent, and the community was having trouble putting trust back into the district. And I was able to kind of like work as a facilitator to get the people to know who this superintendent was. So stuff like that. Yeah. Like I just felt like, I guess I'm going off topic, but I guess School of the Week was one thing, but highlighting the good that these schools do with the School of the Week series for me was really rewarding, and has been really rewarding. We've been doing it since I've started, and it's allowed me to put my face on a brand. People know me now as like the School of the Week reporter, and you get to work with kids who are doing really cute things and teachers who are working really hard. And I think that's my favorite part. I mean, I have to do things in my job like report on homicides or, talk to families who've just lost a loved one, which is really hard. But my favorite thing is being able to show the hard work that the local people here, people in your community that you could see at the grocery store do every day. And I think it's also really rewarding because they remember this moment for the rest of their lives. And I get to be associated with something that they just, they'll watch on the internet or pull up on Google forever. And I get to, be a part of that.
Pepper, that's awesome and a really cool thing to be a part of. Got one final question for you, and this might be the toughest one. It certainly has been for other people. I'm going to ask you about your time at UMass Boston and ask you to shout out one person that was maybe your favorite teammate or your favorite person to play with from your time as a Beacon.
Oh man, so many people are going to be mad at me for this one. Oh, okay. I feel like I could name a lot, but I have to give a huge shout out to, I'm going to say Julia Murphy. Julia Murphy, my big middle hitter. I mean, we used to connect on some crazy setter to hitter whatever connections, and we still are friends till this day. We talk often, and she's come down to Atlanta. I met her in Atlanta. She's visited. So I think, I really appreciated my friendship that grew through volleyball at UMass Boston with Julia Murphy particularly. I think that is definitely one that will continue on forever. I mean, she's a great person. So, and I miss playing volleyball with her. We used to get so hyped.
Pepper, it was great catching up. It sounds like you're doing great things in Macon, and we can't wait to see where you go from here.
Thank you so much, and thanks for asking me to do this. This was great. I miss you guys so much.
That was my interview with volleyball alum Pepper Baker. Pepper ranks second in program history and career assists, and in the top 10 in program history for career digs, aces, sets, and matches played. To check out some of Pepper's work, follow her on Twitter at pbakerwmaz. That's pbakerwmaz. Make sure to tune in next week when I'll have interviews with men's hockey alum Jimmy Ennis and men's lacrosse junior Dara Fahey. See you next week.